Team Sweasey not only has years of experience to pull from, they also have the most comprehensive team of professionals to focus on the minute details of how to sell your home easy while getting you the most on your return of investment.
Your sales to list price tends to be 3 or 4 points above the marketplace. Does that help you justify whatever commission that you're charging to handle my transaction?
Most people never question what I charge. If the offers come in lower than we hoped, and the buyers and sellers have a difference, it's very common in this industry, and I'll speak for myself, that we just go, well, we got a $4,000 or $5,000 gap here. I get the other agent, get myself, and go, hey, if you and I just throw in a little bit and just take that off the top, then the buyer and seller, we can close that gap. So we'll do that quite often.
That's highlighted in this episode of the SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Sweasey. JT and Hal role play a scenario where JT is leaving town to be closer to family and wants to get the most out of his California investment of real estate. Listen to this podcast if you're ever in a position to sell your home, no matter what the reason. Here's your host, James Bueno.
Welcome, everybody, to another SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Mr. Hal Sweasey. Sir, Hal Sweasey, how are you?
Talking a little different than usual.
I am. We were messing with my microphone and headphones, and I'm a little off my game right now.
Jeff kind of beat you down on your energy.
He did.
He said you're being a little strong.
I was coming in hot.
I kind of like the old James, but Jeff's a professional.
My apologies.
He is the godfather.
I almost fell asleep as you were making that announcement. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. I appreciate that. JT, how are you, sir? You're back with us.
I'm awesome.
Mr. Pete.
So I'm great, man.
Yeah. JT, you're going to start us off with this podcast today.
Well, one of the things that this market needs to become more normal, Hal, I would guess would be sellers, right? If we had more sellers.
Yeah. I don't know what normal is, but we would certainly be selling. There would be more activity in the marketplace because we don't have enough homes to sell.
Normal like Jay. Jay's normal.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
AB normal.
Yeah.
Normal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a seller, but I haven't been in the real estate market. I haven't bought or sold real estate for 20 or more years.
Right.
And I got to admit that I'm a little fearful of the whole process. So I do pick up the phone and call you and go, I'm kind of thinking this would be a good time for me to sell and move to somewhere else. Tell me kind of how that conversation might go.
It's kind of like, why do you go to a doctor? You got some pain, you got something going on, you want to know about it. So we're here to provide information for people. I heard a quote just today, and I'll throw this at you guys. Do people sell their homes for money?
Not a reason why I've sold any of my
Good.
homes. Not a one.
Good. Yeah.
Money was a byproduct of what my goal was.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
My goal was to move an investment, so as much cash as I could get out, great. Or I outgrew the house I was in. I sold it to move into a different house.
Right.
I don't think money was the motivating factor.
There was a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, the money was used for a reason. Bigger house, smaller house, whatever. So then, John, if you would call me with that question, I would just say, well, gosh, where are you thinking you would go? Why would you sell? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm thinking of going out of state.
Okay.
Hal, maybe my dollar goes a little further and
sure,
and less taxes.
Yeah. So we get that a lot. People oftentimes use all that long-term wealth or short-term wealth, like Jeff, right? You do it in 2 years, got all that money in their house to better their financial situation and move somewhere that's less expensive. See it a lot in retirees. Could be a smaller house locally, but out of state. That part of the equation is very common. So somebody has this desire to do so, and I would say it's usually for a couple of reasons. One, to maybe have a better lifestyle and not have so much of their wealth in a house. So they'll go somewhere cheaper. They'll go to Tucson or Boise or wherever they go. Or the other would just be like, we don't need the big house anymore. We want something smaller, right? And so in both ways, you can improve your situation if you don't need as much house as you had before. So to me, it sounds like you're kind of scaling down. What is the reason? Is it just a geographic move? Is it the weather?
I want to be near the grandkids.
Oh, okay. Well, that's huge. I would say, I don't know, Jay, you've been around this forever. I mean, moving for family is probably one of the biggest things we hear about.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And how many more birthdays are you going to miss? How many more baseball tournaments are you not going to be present for? You know, to watch the grandkids do their thing. That's I see that a lot.
Yeah. I listened to, I forget the guys that wrote this book, but he talked about, as you get older, let's say dealing with your parents, right? So I'm 60, my father's 88. And, when he was out of the area, I might see him just twice a year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever that. And if he's 88 and he lives 10 years, that means I'm going to see him 20 more times.
Whoa.
That's it. Right? When you think about that in terms of time. So family, I see as a super big draw why people do move.
Would you look online and give me an approximate valuation of what you think my home's worth, or would you come out and actually look at the home?
Really good question. And that's kind of a timing issue too. So it's like, hey, John, did you want to get there like this summer, next year? What's your time frame? Well, we're thinking next year. Okay, great. Since the market's going to change in a year, we don't know where it's going to be. I can just online, I pretty much remember the house, tell you it looks like it's going to sell for somewhere for, 1.2 to 1.3 or something like that, in that range. And they go, oh, okay. Well, now we go to Tucson, and if we owe, let's say it's worth 1.2 and we owe 700, they go, okay, I got 500,000 in equity roughly. Now they can go, okay, well, let's shop around in Tucson and see what that looks like for 500,000. That would be a very common conversation way before anybody wants to sell their house. Oh, I didn't know it's worth 1.2, and Tucson for 500, I can do pretty well. And I can pay to get out of Tucson most of the year because it's horrible. I'm joking, but yeah.
It's just unbearable.
No,
It's not horrible, unbearable.
We love Tucson except for the weather a couple months out of the year.
Yeah, summertime.
3 or 4 months.
Of course,
out
I'd
the
love
year.
to be in that heat.
Yeah. We'll come to Cayucas during those.
Yeah,
months.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I seem to be a little more serious the longer our conversation goes on
Right.
about making this happen. Would you want to get together with me in my home? Would you meet with me in the office? Would this be a phone or a Zoom meeting? What?
Historically, and most of the time, it's face-to-face. It's good for me to get a look at the house because usually people want to know 3 things when I meet with them. Hey, what's my home worth? Is there anything I should do to it to make it more valuable or get it ready for sale? And then lastly, hey, Hal, what the heck are you going to do to make sure this happens, right? So those are the 3 questions that come up in everyone's head. We would sit down face-to-face. Occasionally, people have an allergy or don't want to see in person, or they live out of the area and they'll call me remotely and they say, this is not our primary home. So then I would say, well, if you want an accurate value, let's get a hold of whoever's there or get a key, and I'll just do a walkthrough, and then we'll get back on the phone or back on Zoom, and we'll take care of it that way for people that are remote. Generally, you're going to meet someone in person, talk about it. Plus, if they're going to be dealing with me on the biggest transaction, in most people's lives, they want to see who I am. They want to see that I'm trustworthy. They want to see that we know what we're doing. They want to see that what it makes sense, and they want to make sure that, hey, we want to be able to get along. And that's a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah. Do you have stats, Hal, that you can share with somebody if they want to see what you've done and what makes you the better choice? Of
course, yeah. Everybody has different parameters. Some people picks an agent, quite honestly, because they just like them, and that's fine. Sure. I had a situation recently where I'm seeing a doctor about my hip, and he said, I know you too closely. I'm not going to do the thing because we're too close. I'm going to have this guy do the surgery. I thought that was super professional because I felt bad because I heard this other guy is really good, but my friend is my guy. He took me off the hook. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll be there, which is great. If you're just generally asking to do it when you interview an agent, you want, hey, years in the business. Do you have references or letters of recommendation? Do you have a track record on okay, how many properties have you sold? And go talk to the people they've dealt with before. Those are all good ways to make a comparison.
I'm sure the idea of commissions comes up in the
Sure.
conversation.
Well, they're negotiable, and there's a wide range. So quite honestly, when you have a low inventory market like this and there's not much for sale, you don't need to invest a lot necessarily to attract a buyer. They're going to kind of show up. If everybody's hungry and one fish shows up at the dinner table or steak, we're all fighting for it. So commissions compress when the market's strong like this, and when it's super slow and you have lots of competition, which even today, right, nobody can even remember that. Like, hey, it used to be, hey, there's 15 homes on the market in your price range and we're selling 1 a month. That means you could be waiting 15 months if nobody else lists a house. So you got to be, the best condition, best price, best commission. Some people are more experienced and a little bit more nuanced at negotiating because they do it a lot, and maybe others not so much. And then there's the interpretation of the market and how you interact with the other party. If you have a good conversation and a good working relationship, it's easier to get to the finish line. If you're feeling like you're butting heads, then it's going to be trouble for everybody. So making it as smooth as possible is really important.
So Jay talked about, do you come with any kind of report cards or anything? And in a most recent podcast, we talked about the fact that your track record is one where your sales to list price tends to be 3 or 4 points above the marketplace. Yep. Does that help you justify whatever commission that you're charging to handle my transaction?
Most people never question what I charge. If the offers come in lower than we hoped, and the buyers and sellers have a difference, it's very common in this industry, and I'll speak for myself, that we just go, well, we got a $4,000 or $10,000 gap here. I get the other agent, get myself, and go, hey, if you and I just throw in a little bit and just take that off the top, then the buyer and seller, we can close that gap. So we'll do that quite often. Okay, so it's totally negotiable, and it's not so much about a commission rate. It's just making sure that we can get them where they want to go, and we're getting what's fair for us.
Did I hear you say, I think I was in the other room when you were meeting with a client, and I think I heard you say something like, I'm never going to let the commission get in the way of us doing business.
Yeah,
right?
normally, of course, right? I have overhead, right? So about over a third of what I do is just to pay for my team, everything we do, our marketing, the whole thing. And then people pay a little bit more because you've got experience, you have knowledge, you're going to guide them through the situation, and you know how to handle it when things get crazy, right? So it's kind of like why you pay a doctor instead of doing surgery on yourself.
Yeah. Well, one of the big things I think that most consumers don't take into consideration when paying a real estate commission is the fact that you're coming templated with legal documents that will prevent them from getting sued.
Yeah.
And there's an entire group of attorneys out there that are looking for people that sold their home by themselves because there's mandatory state disclosures. Did that for sale by owner use those disclosures? If they didn't, then they're going after the home seller for all of the gain. I mean, you could lose all of your gain, every dime you got to put in your pocket because you wanted to save 5% or 6% to a realtor or a realtor group, because it usually and frequently doesn't go to the same person. So if you've got a 6% commission, you've got 3 going to one person, 3 going to the other person. And then, like you said, Hal, you got 3% out of that off that in commission. Out of that, you've got operating expenses, which were probably close to 60%, 30% on cost of goods sold, another 30% on the cost of sale. The margin's 40%, which is, I mean, I would ask anybody, would you run your business at a 40% margin? And in our area, I can venture to say your cost of business is probably much higher than they are nationally because of where we are. The rents, the employees, the salaries you have to pay. And I know you take great care of your employees, and it shows in the products that they produce. So when it comes to commission, you absolutely get what you pay for.
And at the end of the day, it's, for example, there's a property, and I won't mention the location, but this person was selling it themselves without a real estate broker. And, I called him up and said, well, hey, if I can put, a few more bucks in your pocket and take care of everything, would you want to do that? And it didn't go. So, okay. We ended up bringing a buyer to the transaction. And here's a property in a neighborhood where all the same. So we sold one for $800, one for $839, and this one was bigger than those two. All right. And it was in a better location, like against the park versus being in it was the prime location. And we actually just brought a buyer, which we do sometimes, and they wanted to do it. And that property sold for $818,000. Wow. I mean, if it would have been listed, it was sold for $850,000. Now, I'm not doing the math, but I mean, it would have been gone. I mean, it would have gone in a week, and it would have gone for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 more than what it's being sold for. Okay, so my point is the exposure, and even then, I was shocked. Some buyer wasn't prudent enough to just find this person that was selling it on their own because it was like on the internet sites and all that sort of thing without quoting names. So I think the value is in exposing it to the real estate community who have the connections with the buyers versus, just having them try to do it themselves, because most buyers don't want to deal directly with a seller.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't know how to. And then who's drawing up the documents?
Yeah.
Okay, Hal.
That's a long answer.
I'm going to bring you back to I want to sell my house.
Yes.
I think I want to hire you to do it for me, so I've invited you.
You think, or you're sure?
Well, I'm not sure yet.
Oh, gosh darn it.
Okay. I've invited you to my kitchen table.
Yeah.
So you can look at my house, walk through it.
Right.
And then what's that conversation going to look like? What kind of questions are you going to ask me to help move the process along and bring us to a conclusion?
At this stage in my career, it's nice because I don't have to do much, quote unquote, selling of myself. So a lot of it is more along the lines of reiterating what our time frame is, the financial, how much do we owe, who's going to get paid off, and then it's more logistics. For example, I'm going to just play a scenario out, John. It looks like we need to get the landscaper, put in some new lawn. I got a guy that can do some touch-up painting, and we should get a couple of inspections done so we get those out of the way up front. So that might take a couple of weeks. Our goal is to kind of be photo ready early part of the week so we can hit it on the multiple listing service in the middle of the week.
So I found out last podcast or the podcast before that I don't have to pay for the photos, huh?
You do not, no.
James is going to take care of the photos?
That's right. I got it taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah, so most agents, don't have a photographer. They sub everything out. We brought it in house because we have better control over that sort of thing. So that we schedule it that way, and then we just go through. Okay, this is how the reports look. This is how we're going to schedule the showings, right? So we're preparing them for the process. Like I had to meet with my dad at a doctor day, and they went through all the steps of this procedure is going to go. I thought this is really good, right? So that's basically what we do.
Do I have to put a sign?
You do not have to.
What's the value in having a sign?
About 20 to 30% of the buyers will come off the sign. And you want to know the reason most people don't want to put a sign in their yard?
They don't want the neighbors to know?
Right, which is funny.
I was guessing. Is that right?
Well, wait till 30 cars show up on a Saturday, or real estate signs, or people are coming going. I told the neighbors you're going to know, and I usually say to you, John, hey, what if the Joneses 2 doors down, now we're going to notify them, but what if they had a good friend that wanted to buy in the neighborhood and they didn't hear about it and you didn't get a good offer because of that? Is that worth not having a sign? Because your neighbors are going to find out.
Got it.
Okay. So do you have to do anything? No, I'm not telling you anything you have to do. I just have to tell you how it affects you if you choose not to have the sign.
And what if I'm still not sure that I want to hire you, but I'm not sure I don't?
That's always the $24 question. Right?
Yeah.
So usually I break it down to 3 things. One is whether or not you're going to sell the house, right? So at this point, John, let's pretend. Are you going to Tucson?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going.
Number 2 is the price. Okay. So we've talked about, it looks like the market's around 1.2 million, and it looks like the house will sell based on other sales in about 2 to 3 weeks. And that's normally when you're going to get your best price. Would that price be acceptable?
Sure.
Good. And then the third question is, gosh, who's going to handle this for you? Do you feel I can sell your home?
Okay. Yeah, I do. I feel like you can sell my home.
Kind of.
Sort of, maybe.
Okay.
Yes.
That's enough.
Yes.
Good.
No,
That's good enough.
no. Yes.
Okay.
How do you overcome the price differences? Like, you're obviously an expert in this, right? Pricing. So let's say you said my house is worth 1.2 and I want to sell it for 1.4. Mm-hmm. What's the conversation like?
Yeah. So a lot of times the reason people hire an appraiser is to look at where the market is and where it's going. So we look at a house that's been on the market like yours for 1.4. Very similar, maybe not the same in this town, but similar. It's been on the market for 90 days. Okay. So James, in this market, when the average days on the market is, 21 days, for those that are selling, and you see a house that's been on the market 90 days, you're now a buyer. What do you think about that house that's been on the market for 90 days?
Something's wrong with it.
Something's wrong with it, right? And if you see a house and you're a buyer and you want to buy right away, and you see one new on the market or one that's been sitting for a while, when you come to a new house on the market, do you think you're going to offer a lot less? Do you think a seller's going to take a lot less in the beginning?
No.
But if it's been there a while, you're like, well, maybe we can get it for less.
Come in low.
Right? So we've got some studies that we bring now that's just really great information about the time it takes on the market, because as soon as you take that urgency away from a buyer, they have more room to negotiate. Okay, and they're less likely to pay as good a price. So I just demonstrate, hey, this has been proven. These people spent the last 90 days doing all your homework for you to determine this house is, these are not going for 1.4. They can go buy a bigger, better house. Okay, this house sold for 1.2. How do we explain to the buyer why yours has $200,000 more in value than this house that just sold?
Right.
Okay, so kind of like that.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So it's just trying to get them to see where the ball is going.
I'm going to remind you of what happened with you and me 2014, 2013.
Were we at a bar?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
You
Mexico?
were at my kitchen table.
Oh, okay.
And we were listing our house with you. We signed all the documents.
Yes.
And I called you the next day and said, my wife changed her mind.
Right.
We've signed a contract.
Right.
But she changed her mind.
Right.
I get home about 3:30 before she was getting home that day, and there's a sign in the lawn already.
We move fast.
And I call you and I go, you better get that darn sign out of the lawn before she gets home from work. Here's 5:30. She's coming up the street. The truck's going the other way down the street with the sign. But what happens when somebody does change their mind?
Then we don't hold them to that. We just say, hey, you don't need our help now, but we're here for the long haul. We'll be here when you need us. But we did end up selling it later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You left me homeless.
Without a sign.
Without a sign. Yeah. We put up a sign after you sold it so you could get a little advertising.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
I feel like you're third degree today, Hal. You're just
Yeah, it's what I do every day.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
It just felt like an open dialogue.
yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just got to say, it's fun for me to be able to help people get from A to B,
Yeah.
right? And try to make it as smooth as possible. And you can tell on our podcast, I try to have fun. John's always cracking up because I get so serious when I meet with people. It's like,
Right.
I'm trying to make it more fun for them. Yeah.
But this is serious business,
Of course.
I mean, for most of us, our biggest asset is our real estate, our home. And so when we do make a change and do a transaction, it's a big
It's your
deal.
livelihood. It's your life. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's important.
Right. And obviously there's stressful moments, and based on the conditions of what's happening, we're getting a property listed. I mean, if people are stressed out, if they can laugh, it's easier. Right.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, Hal has seen me at my absolute worst because of the stress of this whole thing. And he's the one who kept me from jumping off the cliff a couple times during some of these.
Oh, that's right. You
these
called me because
transactions.
somebody asked for a reduction or
Yeah,
something. What was it about? Yeah, that was a while ago.
I used many choice words. If
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't see you because we were on the phone.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
was funny.
was mumbling about you under my breath. Don't worry about it.
It was funny.
Yeah. Hal, you're definitely a counselor as well. So
But-
I've heard you on the phone.
But part of our core values. Do you remember this one, Hal?
I remember them all. Yeah.
Yeah, but the one about taking our
Work seriously,
our
but
work
not
seriously,
ourselves.
but not
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that shows up on our team that we take what we do very, very seriously because we know how important it is to our clients. But we want to smile and laugh and because we know that we're going to handle the hard part for them.
Well, JT, for as busy as we are, I think we would go crazy if we didn't have some fun in here because we're pretty busy.
Speaking of busy, what's
Yeah.
really exciting is, this market has been tough on real estate companies, because they generate revenue based on the number of transactions. It's been tough for a year. And Hal had the most listings he's had in a year this last month, and we have the most, Jay, you'll love this, we have the most escrows open today than we've had in over a year.
Phenomenal. And, there's no substitute for experience.
Yeah.
None. And how long have you been in the business?
32.
And selling real estate, that is?
Yeah. 32 years.
Whoa.
32 years.
Wow. That's impressive.
Since birth, he's 32 years
Thank
old.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
For
You
acknowledging-
know what
impressive.
year I got my real estate license?
Yours?
Yeah.
No, 1970.
When Wilt Chamberlain played for the
Yeah,
Warriors.
Will played for the Warriors. That's 1980.
Oh, okay.
Fun podcast. Thank you all. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
Thank you for listening to the Hal Sweasey podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast. It comes out every Monday, so check for it in your feed for the latest information on the San Luis Obispo County market. The Slow County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast is available wherever you get your podcast and on halsweasey.com, where you can find current listings and other real estate tips. halsweasey.com, that's HALSWEASEY.com. I am James Bueno, Director of Marketing for the Hal Sweasey Group. If you're looking for anything real estate, give us a call, 805-781-3750.
Hal Sweasey is a licensed California real estate broker. DRE number 01111-911. The Slow County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast is a production of AGM Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.